Welcome back to Let's Make a Game. In this video, I'm going to continue talking about how to set up an inventory system for your game. More specifically, I'm going to talk about how you can use pictures to represent items instead of using text. So I have here the example code that we had as of the last video in this series, where it has your inventory and it's a list of descriptions of items and the weight, and then you can drop whichever one you want, and when there are items loose in the area that you're in, you can pick them up. Well, I've changed it so that the system mechanically works exactly the same, except that instead of a list of written descriptions, we have pictures, and then when the player hovers their mouse over an item, it comes up with some hover text or mouse over text. This might be a bit small for you to read, but it has the description of the item and it also has the weight, and that is also a link to drop or pick up the item, assuming that you're able to. When you have an item that is too heavy to pick up, you can still hover over it, but it has the message you are carrying too much to pick up this item. So let's have a look at the code that allows us to do this. It all takes place in the details passage. Of course, we also need to create the artwork. We need to make pictures for each icon with names that have a set pattern, which is icon1.png, icon2.png, and so on, with the numbers corresponding to the slot in the items array. So let's have a look at the details. So once again, there's two bits of code that print these pictures. One prints all of the items that are in the inventory, and one prints all of the items that are in the area but not carried. This code here is to do with the buttons to move, so that's not relevant to what we're talking about today. And the two bits of code are almost exactly the same. So we do this using a HTML table. The reason we need a HTML table rather than just printing the icons using an IMG command is that we're making the mouse over text by using a div and a title. The text that's in the title is the mouse over text. And by default, that means that each item would be on a separate line. So to get around that, we set up a HTML table. We have a single row, a single TR, and we put every item that we're printing in its own slot or TD. So let's have a look at the inventory. So this is everything that is in location 0, because we've assigned location 0 to be a special location that means the player character is carrying that. So we go from 1 to items.length -1, which means that we'll look at every entry in this items array. We're looking for ones where the location is 0. We add the weight of the item to $Z, which is the weight that the player character is currently carrying. So we start at 0 and then we add the weight of each item that they're carrying. So we sort of work out the weight from scratch every time we do this. And we write some code into X, and then we have a TD where we print X and close off the TD. So what is in X? Well, X will be div title equals a quotation mark, the description of the item, so something like that. Then this ampersand #13, which the computer will understand to mean print a line break. Then the word weight, colon, a space, then the weight of the item. So let's say that's 50, something like that. And then a quote and the end of the div. On the next line, we have the IMG command, art/icon, whatever the item number is, something like 5.png, Then within square brackets we have details. That means that the picture is a link and it goes to the passage details, which is this passage. So it goes to the top of the page again and reloads the page. And when it's clicked, it changes something. It changes items Y2, so the location of whatever the item is, to whatever the current location is. So let's say we're in area 1. So the location of the item will change from 0, being in the backpack, to wherever we currently are. Then we have a /div, and then we print all of that. Finally, if the player has no items at all, we just print the message "you have no items" for layout purposes, so that the title inventory refers to something. If we just had inventory and then nothing under it, it would look a bit weird. Then we display loose items. This works almost exactly the same, except that firstly, we're looking for items whose location is equal to the current value of the $location variable, the $location variable being where the player character is at the moment. And we do slightly different things depending on whether the player character can pick up this item. We ask, is the weight of the item plus the weight that it is currently being carried greater than the total weight that the player character can carry? If so, then as the note says, this item is too heavy for the player character to pick up. So we set up the div with the same title as before, essentially, and we add to the hover text, "You're carrying too much to pick up this item." We add the img command and the /div as normal. If they can pick it up, it's the same, except that instead of the message "you're carrying too much to pick up this item" being added to the hover text, we have the img command, which has a link to details and changes the location of the item to 0, which is the special location for the player character's backpack, as it were. Either way, we have W, which in this case is the variable where we're putting all this code, within a TD/TD, and we have the same thing of, if there's no loose items, tell the player character that, so that the loose items heading doesn't look a bit weird. And thus we have a inventory system which works exactly the same, but looks a bit better. It takes up less space. It's a little bit easier to see what's happening, in my opinion, and it looks a little bit more professional anyway. So that's all I have to say about how to do that. As usual, you can download the code and have a look at it yourself. What I would like to do in the future is talk about how to integrate this inventory system with a shop. In other words, having items that you can't just pick up, but you have to buy. But I will leave it there for now. I hope that was useful or interesting to at least some of you, and I hope you will tune in next time.